Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Jackson, and I want to welcome you to our Asta training for this beautiful afternoon. You should be able to download the manual for this session, but we look forward to spending the next few minutes with you going through Asta Powerproject. We'll start in just kind of going through the manual, page 4, right after the initial table of contents. You'll see we are going to just try to cover getting a schedule built all the way through from start to completing a complete schedule, being able to look at a critical path and so forth as we go through the session today. Just to give you a little bit of the basics, on page 6, you'll see that's kind of what I have open in my screen. When I select Asta and I open it up, one of the first screens that pops up is a listing of all of my recent schedules that are open, that I've been working on recently. And you'll find in Asta that's very helpful, just to be able to, once you open it, to be able to select a file pretty quick. Once you get into a schedule, once you actually open one up, you'll notice the different areas of the screen, and this is kind of laid out for you on page 7 in your manual. This area over here on the left-hand side of the screen is what I call the organization section. Here in this middle section right here is the table or spreadsheet area of it. Over on the right-hand side is the bar chart area. And I can actually pull up a details portion for the schedule at the bottom. When I select at the very bottom on the taskbar, there is a toggle for the properties view. I can turn that on and it opens up my detail section on the bottom of the screen. So Asta is very similar to some of the other scheduling software packages. If you're used to using some of the other packages, the layout, with the exception of this organization structure, this is somewhat unique to Asta, and I think you'll find this being a very nice feature. So in your manual on page 8, you'll notice the menus. In Asta, you have your file menu with your open a project, recent projects, new, so forth. We'll be covering these throughout the course of the projects. Probably one of the main ones that you'll want to look at is the options. This is where many of your settings are going to be when you start building your schedule and you're working through that process. Several of these options are on that options tab. That's under the file menu. For the rest of this section, though, are pretty much ribbons, just like an Outlook ribbon or a Microsoft Office ribbon that goes across the top of your schedule. These ribbons will help you navigate through the software much quicker. This gives you we'll be looking at these as we go through the course. The main one you'll use, obviously, is your home ribbon. Views are basically the ribbon that's where you're going to customize what you see on the screen. Project is project specific type of stuff. And then allocation we won't get into. That's mostly has to do with resource allocation. And then the format module, or the format ribbon, you'll use that quite a bit as well. Let's just jump right in and start a project from the beginning. I'm going to hit File and New. And if you'll look on page, if you've downloaded your manual, you should be able to look at page 14, and that there's a little table there that has the exercise laid out for you. That's on page 14 in your manual. If you haven't downloaded it yet, once again, it's in the handouts tab of your control panel, and you can download the menu. Well, we're going to create a schedule, and on that exercise, we are going to use the construction template. So when I hit File, New, I'm going to select the construction template, right? I'm going to go over here to my file name, and I'm going to call this New School. And I can browse, by the way, I can browse anywhere in my file structure, right? To save this file wherever I want it. And I'm going to call this New School. And I can put a title to it. I'm going to call it my high school edition. This is just something that, this is the title that's going to appear on reports and things like that. But I could put who it's for if I want to put a particular owner or someone that I'm doing the schedule for, and then just create that new schedule. So now I have a new project open in Asta Powerproject. I went through, I selected the construction template. Selected construction template, selected a file name where I want to save it. I can put information about the more details on the project itself. Now I have a tool with my my schedule already open. You'll see if this is going to be very easy to navigate once we have this open. That's first thing I do on page 15 in your manual. If you downloaded that, I've got a little diagram there, really just to illustrate the importance of doing things in a sequence. I always recommend that the first thing you do when you create a schedule is to go in and set up the calendar so that you have a good foundation. The calendars are what the software uses to calculate days, assign dates to certain activities. And so the calendar can really be a very helpful thing. A good calendar can, or it can really help make things difficult. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to show you how to manage your calendars. On the left-hand side, when I opened this, when I opened the construction template, it automatically had some calendar set up for me over here. I have a 5-day work week calendar. Notice it has the little checkbox there. I right click on it and I make it my task default calendar. In other words, as I add activities through the process of building a schedule, it makes this this calendar the default as soon as I add an activity. If I right click on it and I select properties, let's do that. Select right click, go down to properties, and that far left tab is my calendar. And you'll notice this is in a different format than what you may typically be used to looking at as far as calendars. In other words, it goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all the way down vertically as opposed to horizontal. It takes a little bit to get used to that. But each Monday is across the top. Now I can very easily take a calendar like they have here and set up holidays and other what they call exceptions. I'm going to add an exception in the U.S. on the third Monday in February is typically a federal holiday for President's Day. I can right click on that and I can assign an exception and just call it a holiday. And I'm going to actually make it a 24-hour exception. In other words, no one's going to have, no work is going to occur during that day. I add that exception and you'll notice now that date that was red is now white. And pretty much I can go in and delete the calendar by doing the same thing. Delete the exception assignment and it turns it back into a working day. Occasionally when you're working with these, you may have to refresh your screen hitting F5, but just to keep the colors assigned properly. But it's easy enough just to add an exception. I added a holiday, 24-hour exception. And that's my schedule. Easy to turn dates on and off. Here's a list of all the exceptions that I have in the schedule. I can come in here and actually delete them in here if I like. Any questions on that? If you have a question on that, feel free to raise your hand and we can address it. All right. Well, next let's go to page 23, and we're going to start organizing our schedule. I think the most important thing in building a good schedule is having a good organizational structure. So if you've got your schedule open, all right, let's go through. I'm going to show you how to build an organizational structure, right? Once again, organization is one of the keys. So to do this, I'm going to break my project down into 4 main categories. In order to build that outline, I'm going to right click on project and insert a child summary. And it'll say, a window pops up, insert before which bar line. I'm going to say just at the end of the chart. And I'm going to call this milestones. And I usually just use the bar title, leave the task title blank, and it'll default to the bar title. You can get a little sophisticated in your naming. I'm going to add another one for design. I'm going to add a new child summary. Go to the end of the chart. I'm going to call it design. I'm going to add another one for procurement. And I'm going to add one more down there for construction. Once again, at the end of the chart. And I've got my 4 basic settings for my chart. Now I've got over here, if I right click on my project tab, my project link over here on the left, and I go to appearance, this is showing you where my heading colors are coming from. My black is from the very top part of my headline or my outline. This green is the next part of my outline. I'm going to have my next level is going to be blue. I'll go ahead and add one while I'm here and make it a gray or a light yellow. And I'll have another outline color to go through, and you'll see that pop up. I'm going to go into my construction, and I'm going to insert a child in construction. I'm going to add 4 in here as well. One is going to be my general conditions. I'm going to add another one in construction. Notice when I add, it's letting me select where I want to put it. One, general conditions, I'm going to have site work. I'm going to have a building. Selecting it at the end of the chart. And I'm going to do one more for site finishes. And this is the typical way that I go through building my outline for my project so that I can create my schedule and have it well organized. So let's take our building. By the way, this outline structure that I'm creating is on page 24 in your book. So I'm going to go into building. I'm going to add a new one for substructure. I'll add another one for structure. I'll do one for interiors or exteriors. And then one for interiors. Okay, and you can see from that standpoint how easy it is to add task in your schedule. Once I select one of these, add my outline structure. Once I select one, notice that when I select one of these headings, that my area over here for activities are empty. All of these areas are empty. I haven't added any activities yet. I have just created my calendars, and I have built my outline structure. In the manual, you'll notice when we get to page 25 and 26, it starts talking about summary level, summary task. Basically, in creating that outline structure, that's what you have just created, is a group of summary tasks that right now are empty because there are no activities on it. But if I select building, for example, you can see my substructure, structure, exteriors, and interiors, and you can see there's summary tasks over here that are basically empty at this point. So let's talk about adding tasks. We're going to go into the beginning, and if you look on page 30 in your manual, there's the first list of activities I'm going to have you to add. It's very simple. You'll notice in this left column, there's milestones, design, procurement, general conditions, site work, substructure. We're just going to manually type these in, and you'll notice that if I select milestones, this is where I add them in. Once again, my project outline has all of the headings in it, but if I add activities in this screen, it's going to add them actually to that project. So if I want to add activities to the milestones section of my outline, I'm going to type on milestones and then just add the activities in here, and they will be assigned to that milestone group. So notice to proceed, and I'm going to make a duration of 0, and Asta will automatically recognize that activity is a milestone. I'm going to do the same thing with substantial completion. Make it a 0 duration, so it will also be a milestone. You can see that under design. I'm going to go down here to design and add an activity for prepare final design. Right? There's my procurement. Here's my procurement. One of the nice features about this is this allows you to organize and enter your activities one group at a time, and particularly when I'm working with a group of field staff, superintendents, so forth, to be able just to isolate one small group of activities at a time makes it much easier to focus and concentrate on getting just that group of activities together. So under general conditions, I've got mobilization. I've got trailer setup and fencing. And I've got another activity for final clean. I'm going to put my durations in there. And I put a D after it just so that Asta knows that I'm doing days, and makes things a little easier for it. Then under site work, I've got survey and staking, excavate and grade, layout and grade pad. Whoops, I'm actually going to move that layout and grade pad under my substructure activity. I just cut and paste. Kind of went out of order there, but there's my survey and staking. And I've got 2 days there. My final clean or excavate and grade, I've got 7 days. Under substructure, layout and grade pad, underground utilities. Farm core footings. Okay, so I'm adding these activities throughout my in each group. So that's one way of adding them. Just select. That's one way of adding activities, is selecting an outline or section in your outline and just manually enter activities. You'll notice I can also, like on my structure, if I go into my structure, I can add activities in Asta by just clicking and dragging over here in the bar chart area. So if I've my next activity on page 31 is structural steel for 5 days, I can click on that activity and then come over here and type structural steel. Roof joists and deck, 5 days. Once again, I'm going to do this way, just add an activity. And I'm going to add another one for exterior framing for 8 days. Notice the little yellow box as I'm dragging shows me my 8-day duration. This is for my exterior framing. 5, 10, and 5. I'm going to do my next 3. 5, 10, and 5. And this is my door. So I've been able to add activities just by manually entering them in the outline structure, or you can see I click and drag and it also adds activities. And I'm going to take these, by the way, I'm going to take my exterior activities. I entered them in the wrong place, in the wrong outline section. So I can cut, right? I highlighted the activities, hit cut, come down to my exteriors, and I paste them, and I put them back in the right place. There's several different ways to move them around, but that's probably one of the easiest. Now, you should have been able to download a spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you how to insert activities from a spreadsheet. So what we're going to do with this spreadsheet, we're going to start off getting it ready to import. I've got a group of activities that I've added, and I've got a duration here. Maybe one of my field people gave me this group of activities. What I'm going to do, I want to be able to bring these in, and so Asta's going to need to know whether or not that's 5 days, 5 hours, 5 weeks. So I need to add a D after it. So I'm going to do that right quick. I'm going to add it over here, and then I'm going to use the formula for concatenate, C-O-N. If I type equals C-O-N-C, it gives me the concatenate option. I can pick either one of those, and I'm going to add my B1, comma, to my C1, and then close out that parentheses. And it makes a 5D. I'm going to fill that down in my Excel, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste that as a paste value so the formula goes away, and then I can delete these 2 columns. So now I've got my interior frame activities and my durations. So I'm going to show you how to paste it. Now that I have that set up just the way that I want to import it, all I have to do now is go into Asta. Look at my Asta, and I want to make sure that my columns line up with the columns that I have in my spreadsheet. In my spreadsheet, I don't have a column for task ID, so I'm just going to remove this column. I right-click on the columns and remove it. So now I've got my name and duration. That's what I want to paste in here. So now all I have to do is right-click over here on this gray area in this gray column, and I'm going to hit paste, and there are the activities from my spreadsheet. Easy enough. If you have any questions on that, once again, please let me know. We're copying and pasting from an Excel sheet. Once again, I've got a couple of activities here that I want to put in my site finishes. So I'm going to highlight my site finish grade, base and paved parking lot. Once again, I'm going to cut, go down here to site finishes and paste those into the appropriate one. So notice, once again, here's my project. Now, if I select project, I can see all of my outlines, headings with all of the activities that are in each heading. If anywhere I select on this outline structure, it basically runs a filter for whatever section on that outline that I select. Here are just my interior activities, for example. Easy enough. Okay. Let me just show you a couple of, while we're here. If, let's say, in my experience, I find that the more detail you have in your outline structure, the easier it is to be able to deal with the activities within that structure. And I read it somewhere in a report years ago, some kind of paper, that the human brain can only keep up with 6 to 9 items at one time, like keeping that kind of stuff in your memory. So I typically will try to keep activities in groups of 10 or less. And so in this case, if I decided I wanted to break these finishes, maybe I want to just break out these, the rough ends in my interiors, break out the rough ends from my interior finishes. Well, I can do that. Right now, everything is under the title interiors. But if I go over here into my interior frame and my plumbing, mechanical, rough insulation, I'm going to, all the way up through insulation, I'm going to summarize those. On my home ribbon, I can go up here and I can say summarize, and I'll call this rough ends. It added that line, that summary bar for my rough ends. And I'm going to go down here in my drywall. I'm going to highlight this, hold my shift key all the way down to test and balance. And I'm going to summarize those. It inserted that summary into my interior finishes. Notice now over here in my outline, it's broken out my rough ends and my interior finishes. I can go back up here to my appearance and add another level so that I can see my my new items that I just added. Right, so there are my interior finishes, my interior rough ends, and here's my complete building schedule. Very easy to get activities in there. Let me just show you a couple of items that are in your book. I can add multiple tasks to a row. We're not going to do that so much in the class, but just so you kind of get an idea, I'm going to go down here and just add some. I can add an activity here and add another activity on the same row, right? Now, what Asta is actually doing, it's actually creating those 4 tasks, but it keeps them rolled up. I can roll them up on run row. So if I put site, landscaping or whatever, when I expand it, it adds site landscaping to all 4 activities. So that's another way to add activities. Just selecting on one row, sliding your bar and adding multiple activities on one row. This is on page 36. Page 37 has some good pointers. I can click and drag an activity. Notice when I put my mouse over here to the right side of an activity, I can drag that length longer, right? I can drag the end date out. Same thing on the start date on the other end of an activity. I can just move a bar out and move it back if I want manually. Now, once I schedule it, it's going to bring it back once I calculate it. But just for creating a simple bar chart, it's very easy to move bars around, and if you're not using the logic. I can also make a lot of these changes down here in this. If I have this activity selected, right, I can go down here in the bar chart or in this object bar and make edits down here easy. We're not going to spend much time on that, but I can move bars up and down, right? If I want to move one up and down, I get over here on the on the left-hand side of that row at the very edge of the left, and notice how this, what they call a little candy wrapper icon, comes up, and I can move that around, especially when I have an activity. If I want to move my insulation down into my interior finishes, I can move it down that way or move it back up. Easy to move things around. Okay. Let's talk about adding logic. Adding logic. I'm going to show you some different ways to add logic. On page 41, you'll notice there is the typical, what I call the linking tool, where I can go in and link activities. Now, one thing that I like to do when I'm adding logic is turn my auto schedule on, right? So where when I add a link between two activities, it automatically calculates it. So I'm going to go into File, Options, and under Reschedule tab right here in the middle, I'm going to see my auto reschedule on the bottom right of that window. I'm going to turn on my Reschedule All. And now when I add logic, it's going to do it. So I'm going to I'm going to show you 3 real quick ways to add logic. And here's how I go about doing it. If I want to tie my notice to proceed, right, to my prepare final design, I'm going to just add some here just so you can watch. You can take this. We're going to record this, by the way, so you can watch this later. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. I'm going to add another one just by tying my prepare final design. Notice when I put my mouse over on the bottom right of a task, I can click and drag and tie it to another successor. Also notice when I'm adding my logic, sometimes I'll zoom in on some activities. If I put my mouse up on the top in the timescale area and put my mouse over one of the little red tick marks, I can click and drag. That zooms out, zoom in. If I move my mouse up another row up to the top and select, it turns into a hand that'll slide the timescale back and forth. So let's keep adding. I'm going to tie my mobilization to my submittals. Once I get my mobilization done, I'm going to do my trailer setup and fencing. And I'm going to leave final clean again. So that's one way of adding logic. Another way, what's nice about adding logic, one of the other ways is to highlight multiple items. I select one and select another one using my control key. And I go up to on my home ribbon. There's this add delete links. I'm going to select link task, and it automatically links those tasks. So that's very convenient. Like under my substructure, I'm going to highlight all 4 of these, or 5 of them, and I'm going to go and link task, and it just adds all of those activities in one quick insertion. One more just for fun. I'm going to click on it, go up to link tasks. Okay, so that's the second one. First one is doing linking with the linking tool. The other one is just highlighting activities and linking tasks. Here is, let me just show you some pointers on the adding logic. You know, a lot of activities will overlap. So instead of having a finish to start, which is what we've been doing, I can have a start to start. And let me just show you how I can do a start to start. In other words, I'm going to start my framing and, let's go into my interior rough ends. I'm going to start my framing and I'm going to do a finish to start. Or excuse me, let's do a start to start. Let's cancel that. Notice I put my mouse at any point in that any point on that bar. Let me zoom in just so you can see that a little better. So there's a start to start with my mouse at the beginning of an activity. As I move across the middle, I can do a start to start right there. And notice in the yellow box, it shows that would be a 1 day lag. There's a 2 day lag, and I'm going to tie that to the successor. And it automatically put a 2 day lag in there. Now I can also move that lag if I just click on that logic and drag it. I can make that a 3 day lag. Right? Do that again for my other ones. I'm going to do the same thing for my mechanical. I'm actually going to make that a 2 day lag for my mechanical. Oops, let me undo that. Hate it when that happens. I'm going to move that lag over a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to do one more for my rough in electrical down here. And then I'm going to tie all of those. I'm going to tie my framing to insulation. Let me show you how you can actually take your insulation and add multiple predecessors to it, right? I just select my insulation and get out here. I'm going to say, I just drug it out and it opened this box, right? And I'm going to say coming into link to selected. In other words, it's going to be coming into my insulation. I want to find any activity that starts with rough. I can put what they call a wild card, an asterisk in front of it. In this case, if I have an asterisk in front and an asterisk after, it'll look for anything with the word rough in it. In this case, my rough electrical and everything is at the beginning of the name description. So I really don't need this wild card in front, but I could do that. And I select it, and there it gives me all the information with my rough in. So I'm going to select rough mechanical, rough electrical, and rough plumbing. And watch when I add these, it's going to add all three of those at one time. That's a nice feature for adding your logic. The third way to add logic is to turn on the link task mode. Now, link task mode, you have to be a little careful. But when I turn it on, the order in which I select activities is going to add a relationship between them. So in this section, I've got activities that are out of order. So I'm just going to go down through and select drywall. I'm going to go to tape and texture. Notice that's the tape and texture is highlighted right now. So the next one I select, it's going to add it. So I'm going to go down here and add paint. Once I get my paint, I'm going to do my ceiling grid. Zoom out so you can see me here. Watch me doing this. I'm going to do my ceiling grid, and this is a holiday period. You can see there. That's what that shading is for. So from ceiling grid, I'm going to install my air vents, and then from there, once I get those in, and my electrical in, I can do my ceiling tile. After I do that, got everything overhead, I'm going to do my flooring, and then my millwork, and then my doors, and then I will do my test and balance. So that's a sequence. So the order that I selected those, it actually created the logic in those orders. Now, once again, I've still got my linking, my link function highlighted. So I've still got that icon. So whatever I click next, it's going to link to test and balance. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to click over here in the left to unselect this. So now I can go back in and insert these others in that process. I'm going to start over basically. So with my Ceiling grid, I'm going to highlight that one. I'll do my finish electrical and my ceiling tile. So basically, I just finish electrical. I'm going to tie that into my ceiling tile. Right? I'm going to unselect, come over here, unselect it so I can get these restroom things in. Once I get my flooring in, I'll do my finish plumbing, restroom partitions, and then test and balance. And that's how you tie those in. Easy enough. And then I go back up here and I turn that option, I turn my link task mode off. And I can tie these last two in. So that's how I link tool. I have the linking tool, just like I use there. I have the highlight several activities, select link task, and then I can turn on link task mode and link in the order that I select them. All of this is spelled out pretty much in your book. Let me show you just a couple of things. What I do now is once I have each one of these groups linked, now I'll go to and link between the groups. For example, I've already got the early ones done, but I'm going to start here with survey and staking. What needs to happen with survey and staking? Well, I want to have my mobilization done, and then I'll start my survey and staking. So I hold my control key, select the two activities, and then link task. To do my layout and grade, I need my excavation done, right? I could just use my linking tool if I want to do that. That's pretty easy. Tie that in there. Notice I kind of skipped over my final clean. We'll come back to that in a minute. My cure slab is going to allow me to start my structural steel. My root joist and deck, once I get that in, it's going to allow me to start my exterior framing. Whoops, I forgot to tie these. I'm going to highlight, hold Control Shift, and link these tasks. Forgot those when I passed through there. And my interior framing, I'm going to start that after exterior framing. So make that logic tie. My drywall is going to be done with my insulation, but I also want my roof membrane on. So I highlight roof membrane, select drywall, and link them. And then my site finish grade, I'm going to tie that to my roof membrane as well. So I'm going to highlight roof membrane, go down to my site finish grade, and link those tasks. I can also hit Control F2 to link tasks. So that's the second step. My first step was going through and tying all the activities in a group, in the individual groups. Second step is going in and making sure each group has an activity that's kicking the work off. What's the predecessor for each group? And then finally, I go in and say, what is going to be, make sure everything has an ending activity. In this case, my final clean, I'm going to tie that to substantial completion. So you'll notice in this phase, I'm going to be tying things to my schedule that are not really close to each other, that are next to each other. So what I can do, here's where a nice feature is. I can select my milestones over here on the left. There's my milestones. I can select my general conditions, and it gives me my final clean, just the activities that are in these two selections. I can link those right like that. Right. Then I click back up here on project, and I've got all of them in view again. And all of these appear to have, except for my trailer setup and fencing, I need to tie it to my underground. I'm going to do that by my general conditions and my substructure, right? There's my trailer setup and fencing, and there's my underground utilities. So that's got to select. Let's see where I'm at. Now, everything else seems to have a good one, a good successor, with the exception of now my interior finishes, which everything's tied into my test and balance. And then base and pave. Both of these, I just want to tie into my final clean. So once again, I can go, my final clean is up under general conditions. So I can go general conditions, hold control key, interior finishes. That puts them close together, and I can just tie my test and balance. Whoops. Well, by the way, the undo button in Asta is great, thankfully. It's not letting me drag over that window, but I can do it this way. Link from selected to, and then I'm going to look for final clean. Use the wild card in there, link it. Try that one more time. Link it. And there it did. It linked it to my final clean. And I'm going to do the same thing with my site finishes. I'm going to select my base and grade, our base and pave parking lot. And I'm going to link that to my final clean as well. And it did that. So now I have my entire schedule linked together from start to finish. I can select my start column to sort. And there is my baseline schedule from start to finish. Any questions? I'm going to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to sort on my start. I'm going to take some of these summaries off, right? I'm going to go into my format bar chart. And over here on my general tab, I'm going to show my summary task as just headings and columns. That takes those bars off. And now I have a nice clean schedule. I can format some of these things. Here's some float columns or float bars that I can turn off just by turning them off here on my format ribbon. I can turn off my relationship lines. So if I want to have a nice clean bar chart, I can turn off some of my shading right here. I can go back into my bar chart, format bar chart, and under my task, I'm going to left display. I'm going to leave it blank. I'm going to add my activity descriptions over here next. On the right, we'll go to ID and select activity name. And there's my activity. There's my bar chart. A complete schedule built from start to finish in 1 hour. Thanks again for attending today. Let me know if you have any questions.